So this is inside of Ubuntu VM at the moment. It's really your choice. We have tools for Windows, Mac, Linux. They all work. I personally, I use Windows 10 as my primary operating system, but I actually do a lot of my tree-related things inside of Ubuntu VM because Linux is substantially faster at a lot of things involving tree management, like Mercurial, a lot of things that it's like literally order of seconds on Linux versus minutes on Windows. I mean, it's a huge difference. So personally, I would recommend Linux or Mac. I think either one would be fine there. But Windows, it'll work just fine. It's just going to be a little slower.
We all have Ubuntu set up here, like you, so you are working with Ubuntu.
Great. Well, that'll make your life easier then. Okay.
Yeah. When we did the push to try test, we all used Ubuntu, so I think we're good.
Okay. That's interesting. There's a black rectangle in the middle of that shared screen. Okay, I have no idea what that is, but okay, we'll deal with it. This is running in VMware, so. Okay, so what we need to figure out this morning, I guess, is what the actual learning objectives of this session are going to be, because there's certainly a lot of different ways we could go here. I think for now, let's start with the basics of, let's just first off figure out how we determine what revisions are mergeable to Central, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and fire up Tree Herder. Again, apologies, this is going to be probably not as responsive as it could otherwise. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what. I actually got another window open here. Back to my host machine for a minute here. A little faster on one. Okay. All right, so now I'm looking at inbound, right? And we're trying to decide, is something here actually ready to go to Mozilla Central or not, which means all the tests are passing. There's nothing that needs to get backed out. It's good. Everything up to that commit is known to be okay. And the judgment call for that is going to be looking at things like, were there any recent backouts? So for example, I'm going to look here and see that our good friend Sebastian here, Eric's, has in fact done a backout recently of 1359017. I guess while we're doing that, I can ask some basic questions. So are you guys using the Mozilla Unified Repository for your needs? Okay.
Yes, we have up to date.
That'll make your life easier. Okay. So we've got inbound up here now. So we're looking back at the backout there from Sebastian. So the important thing there is we see that was 1359017. And what that means, of course, is that anything that was in between that bug 1359017 landing and its backout is not something we can merge, because you'll just merge test failures around in the meantime. And I'm sure right now there's some unstarred web platform tests and other various failures that got that backed out. So that's the first thing is, are there any known issues like that you just know that this range of commits is bad because of various bustages? The other thing after that is basically of saying, do we have sufficient test results for a push to say that it's for sure good? So in this case here, you can see that we're waiting on that back. Let's just use Eric's backout here as our example here still. So we can see there's still a lot of running tests on there, right? We don't have any real Windows builds yet, other than a little bit of debug coverage. Can you expand the view on those groups? Just use the expand button in the upper right, the little plus next to the. Yep. All right, okay. So you can see there now, and of course, since we have our wonderful load balancing system called SETA that prevents us from scheduling every test on every push because we just don't have the machine capacity to do that, What you end up getting is you end up with pushes that only ran a small set of tests on them, and meaning we really can't say with any level of certainty that that commit is really good. So we have to pick a commit that's got a good set of full test coverage. Now, as it stands here, it looks like this one is going to have all the tests run on it eventually once the Windows build's finished, because it looks like everything on every other platform is getting pretty well scheduled. Coop, if you scroll down a bit, you know, we'll certainly, I think we'll be able to see some other pushes here where you can see only a subset of test suites have run on them, and as a result, you know, we won't have nearly the good amount of information that we need. Coop, can you scroll down a little bit? See, that one looks pretty good too. Keep scrolling. There we go. So on Baku's original push, it looks like there. Scroll a little bit, even that one works too, I think, yeah. So you can see on that, yeah, on those pushes, for example, right there, you can see all the builds are there because we schedule every build on every single push. Primarily, that was a request of the Sheraton team originally at one point in time, specifically so it's easier to backfill, and if there's a test failure, having to wait an hour or an hour and a half for a build to finish before you can even start getting test results on a push was deemed unacceptable, because that means the trees are going to be closed for that much longer. So we at least managed to successfully convince everyone that it was in their best interest to schedule the builds on every single push, so that all we need to worry about is backfilling tests. So as you can see in here, for example, at this push here, you can clearly see all the builds are there, but there's not a lot of tests being run on there. You compare that to some of the other ones we were just looking at where, you know, significantly more tests were running. So this is an example of a push where SETA came in there and dramatically cut back on the number of tests that were run. Therefore, any of those pushes I would say are not really good choices for merging, with some exceptions that we can get into at some point, but for the general case right now, I would say stick to not running those. The other rule we typically had in the past has been related to PGO builds. You can see on Linux and Windows, we do profile-guided optimization for our builds. That's where we do a first build of Firefox, we then launch it, run various pages through it with the compiler actually like paying attention to what things we're doing with the browser, and then it does a second optimization pass where it tries to optimize for performance and things like that based on the profiling data that it got. It's really nice for benchmarks actually, and for other things. For the speedometer benchmark that we're optimizing 57 for right now, we got about a 4% performance improvement basically just by changing what we PGO'd. Not having to do anything else, just by changing the pages that we launched during PGO, which when our developers have been spending countless engineering hours to eke out 0.1% on that benchmark, 0.2%, a 4% win just by loading a few more pages during the profiling run was pretty amazing. So that's what we use PGO for. PGO, since it depends on the compiler doing things, can sometimes give weird results where it ends up, the compiler does something, if it's got a bug in what it does, it ends up miscompiling something and you end up with test failures that don't show up in a non-PGO run. So our rule has always been, we need to make sure that whatever we merge to central also has known good PGO runs. Luckily for you, I do believe now that we've changed over most of our test scheduling to Task Cluster. I think we don't restrict PGO testing like we used to. We used to only run PGO builds and tests every 3 hours. So you had the extra constraint of it has to be running all the tests, it has to not be in the middle of a range of known bad commits, and it has to have PGO builds and tests on it for you to be able to merge it. Fun times. So sometimes we would literally get to a point where if you got one merge done during the day, that was good, because it was just having to have everything line up perfectly on a given commit. And you could do things like you could manually force PGO builds to run on a certain push, things like that to try. You say, I think this one's going to be all right. I'm going to run PGO on it just to be sure, you know, things like that. But nowadays, thankfully, I believe we actually basically treat PGO like anything else, and you can see we run them side by side with the other opt and debug builds. So that's not as much of a concern anymore now. I think you can largely just say as long as you've got a full set of tests run across all platforms that you're pretty well good to go. So thankfully, we have made progress in what we do here to make people's lives easier and make the decision-making process less complicated than it used to be. So in this case, I would say looking at, and of course the other thing is from a sheriffing standpoint is intermittent failures. If you notice that there's a new frequent intermittent failure that you don't really want to be starring hundreds of times across central and autoland and inbound and everything else, and you know right now it's only on inbounds, for example, you probably want to take the time to investigate it and see if you can find the cause and back it out before you do merges, just for your own sanity. In general, again, we would much prefer that we not merge around new intermittent failures to the best of our ability. I mean, again, there's only so much you can do, but when it's blatantly obvious that this is failing on Linux, really often that's certainly something that you're going to hopefully catch and not merge. Presumably, hopefully, you'll find the cause and back it out. So that's the basic 10-minute overview of the general process we try to do for merges. Obviously, the hard part with this is making that judgment call or that decision about is this commit good or not, especially when you have intermittent failures and everything else. It really requires some knowledge about the current state of the trees to make that judgment call, and that's the challenge of the job, I guess. So that's the basic overview. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Yes.
Good questions here.
Yes, so you can do merges even if you have test failures on that push.
Yeah, I would say generally they will hopefully at least be classified. I would say you don't want to have unclassified failures. You want to at least have made sure that everything that's on that push is a known intermittent. But beyond that, I mean, yes, because you're never going to ever have a run that's pure green. I mean,
okay.
Those are sort of like the white whales, of Mozilla sheriffing is the idea of an all green push. We have screenshots of the extraordinarily rare times this happens because it's that rare. So,
okay.
But yeah, as long as it's all kind of known intermittents, yeah, you're fine. But again, the real thing is, the real concern is when there's a new frequent one, we want to avoid merging it around. And setup can make that really challenging because we only run some test suites like every 5th or every 7th push. It may look like it's an intermittent failure when in reality it's actually perma-failing, but you can't tell because it's only running every 7 pushes. But oh yeah, the last time it failed was 7 pushes ago. It must be intermittent. And so that's the really hard part, and that has definitely burned people in the past. I'm very sympathetic to you on that one because that's really going to be challenging to catch. And the best option you're going to have for that is when you see a new failure that you don't recognize is backfill. At least backfill, back maybe 5 to 10 pushes. Maybe do some retriggers, retrigger 5 or 6 times, just to kind of get a sense of, is this just a one-off? Is this happening frequently? Is it happening maybe on other platforms? Things like that, and try to get a reasonable good sense before just filing the bug as a new intermittent failure that you've done some investigation there first.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it worth talking a little bit about backout mechanics while we're here, just because this is what's happened? One thing I would note first off is you'll see that this check-in that actually got backed out is done by, I don't want to say a known bad actor, but I compile stats on the number of backouts that happen.
I wasn't going to say it.
If you're looking for something to back out, like if there's a failure and you're not sure, if you have data that tells you that certain people get backed out more than others, you should act on that. So I will point you at the statistics I have. I have them for every month this year so far. And this one developer, because he's working with web platform tests specifically, it's a very fragile area of the code that tends to expose some problems. And he gets backed out more than anyone else, I think.
Yeah, I believe it. So here's the thing. And I'm going to use this term more humorously than seriously. But yes, you will develop a shit list over time of people. where you will recognize certain names as saying, yeah, I know this person. Yes, this is going to happen. I guarantee it right now. You will develop that list of people. And unfortunately, yes, Baku tends to be on that list. But like Chris said, it's not always as simple as just saying this person's a crappy developer. You will certainly, I guarantee you will certainly see times where you will just be frustrated because the developer clearly just wasn't paying attention, was being lazy, things like that. For example, pushing their patches to inbound when they had a blatantly broken try push. Like we've seen that, where we've gone into like when you have a new failure, we look at the bugs, we look at their try pushes, and we see the exact same failures in their try pushes as we see on inbound. Like huge memory leak. I think there was one the other day that Eric's had where they literally blew up all the multi-tests like across every platform. And the try push had the same bustage.
They landed inbound 5 minutes after they pushed a try or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to see that, and yes, it's going to make your blood boil. I'm sorry. You're right. And that kind of stuff is just developer laziness. They're human beings. They're going to do that kind of stuff from time to time. It is just the way it is. However, yes, we also have people like Baku and other sort of people, like some of the JS Engine people, that they work on some insanely complicated code and not very well owned code, or XP Connect, like Chris Maglione. And the bottom line is it's really difficult sometimes, especially and with intermittent failures on top of it. It's really hard sometimes to actually do it, to really feel great about everything you're doing without just doing an inordinate amount of try pushes, which we sort of tell developers to be careful about because we don't, for resource utilization issues, we don't, so it's kind of a balancing act there. So, but yes, you will begin to recognize certain people eventually as more failure prone than others. Yes, that is just sort of a fact of life. So, and I'm not surprised, Chris, that you've got stats to prove that one. So anyway, yeah, so we can go through backouts. I was really hoping to do some screen sharing here. Yeah, because I was actually thinking too, before we got into actual merge mechanics, I was wondering if it would have made sense even to go through check and neededs or something, just more of a simple, here's a patch, land it kind of a thing. So I guess so you've all run mock material setup on your machine, so you've done so you've set all that up. Okay, good. So presumably you've enabled the queue backout extension then. I believe it prompts you to do that during material setup, I think. If not, we can walk through how to do that because you'll definitely want that.
Which extension?
Queue backout.
I don't know, maybe
We
one of
don't have
us
that.
could share screen and we could search
Yeah.
for a merge candidate or something for today.
Oh, perfect.
Sure.
Or just go to tree herd and discuss what can be merged and what not.
Yeah,
Just having
so
some examples.
Yeah, we could
mergeable, we can look at Autoland as well if that's.
Yeah, we could do a sample merge, and you could push it to try. It'd be better than nothing. Then we could also go through about how to walk your repository state back to something that you're not going to leave yourself in this weird state where you have this merge commit that no one else has. So, so we can walk through that, and believe me, there will probably be times where you'll need to figure out how to walk back your repository to a known good state because part of the learning curve is you will probably break your clone at some point or another. It's just the fact of life. We've all done it. All right,
Okay.
so let's see. So,
Try to share. Whoever's going to go through it here.
yeah, whoever wants to try and do a shared screen.
Okay, I'll try to share the screen. Sorry, another one. I have two screens. Okay. So you have asked about extensions.
Yes. So you can
Okay.
look at, yes, good.
I have one of these ones.
All right, you do not have Q backout enabled at the moment. Okay. It conveniently lives in the same version control tools repository as those other ones, so you can manually add it to your HGRC, and then hang on just a minute. I will dump into the soft vision sheriff channel the path to it. Here. Oh, I'm also going to dump Q import BZ in there, as that's a handy one if you're doing check-in needed. Obviously, these paths are not going to be right because they're based around my VM, but you get the idea. So those are the paths. I just dumped them into the IRC Sheriff's SV channel. Basically, yeah, you're going to want Q back out for doing backouts. And Q import BZ is useful that you can actually import. Actually, yeah, those paths will just work for you. Convenient. Okay.
This should be fine, right?
Yeah, they should work. So, Q import BZ is useful for if you want to import a patch that's attached to Mozilla. Old style patch, like a regular old diff that someone attached. We also have the Moz review stuff, but that you will generally not be needing to use any extensions for. You can just auto land it directly from Moz review. As we move to other tools like Fabricator and things like that, I honestly don't know what the mechanics of that will be yet. I guess we'll find out together. So, all right. Anyway, so Q back out. That is the one we're going to focus on for now. So, I guess the practice thing we could do here is we could actually back out Baku's patch. You could actually do that yourself. So I am going to pull up inbound here, get the hashes. So let's say you're sheriffing the trees and you notice that Baku landed his thing and broke the trees. Can you switch to your unified repository? You're probably going to need to pull in changes and make sure that you're current there.
Yes, I'm there now.
Yeah, HG pull FX trees, I think is the command you want for that.
Sorry?
HG pull, here, that should, and a unified repo
Okay.
should pull everything down right away. And then you can, oh, well, you've got Aurora in there. That's not going to be much good, but okay. So I just have the command now to switch to inbound as well. Oh my, it's got a lot of changes to pull in at the moment. So I would recommend, I have a shell script that I use to update my trees on a regular basis. I would recommend you get in the habit of doing frequent updates of your clones.
Well, I have done the update with 10 minutes before the call. You can see here.
I just put, oh, you know why? Okay, I see. Huh, interesting.
So I got every time this kind of numbers.
4 repos. I see you did a little for loop there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the little shortcut for you is the pull FX trees. It'll basically, instead of having to do a for loop like that, it'll just pull them all automatically. Okay. So Aurora had pulled in the history before, so now it's pulling it in. I got you. Okay. You're also the other, yeah. Okay. Cool. So this won't go nearly as slow in the future. This is a one-off. But the important thing is you're pulling in all the history for beta and things like that as well, which are going to be eventually important repos for you to have up-to-date clones of. Once that's done, we can switch to inbound. And actually, we're going to want to switch to an older revision so that we can actually back it out, because the current inbound already has it backed out, so we're going to need to go back to something older than that. I'm also going to look up here how to back out. So the link I just put in the channel has a pretty good summary of things. We are going to focus more on the oops command here rather than qbackout specifically. And you may be familiar with MQ already. It's sort of mixed about people's liking of it, and it's not considered proper Mercurial workflow. So we're going to stick with the oops command, which does a more normal way of working on top of your repository, and slightly less dangerous and prone to breaking you in exciting ways. MQ can be very dangerous in a unified repository is what it boils down to. So you have to really be careful with that tool in a unified repo.
You should use oops then?
Yes. Oops will actually make regular commits onto your repository rather than patches like MQ does. While we're talking here, one thing stylistically, and I've actually talked to Eric about this before, but from a style standpoint, going back to the inbound repo, you'll notice that Eric's used the command where he backed out every individual commit as a separate change, which so the Baku landed 5 commits and Eric's has 5 backout commits. I'm personally not a big fan of that. I think it's kind of pollutes the history. Generally, when I do backouts, I try to keep it to 1 commit per bug. So in this case, I would have backed out all 5 commits as one single change. And you can do that with the oops command with the -s. I don't like backing out multiple bugs in 1 commit. That's a little less great. Again, from a history standpoint, it's nicer just to be able to have a single commit in each bug saying, here's the backout of this bug. So I would personally recommend that in general you avoid doing this, where you have single commits for every single change. So I'm going to drop another command into IRC. It looks like we're almost getting done here. Promise. We're going to switch instead. So as I mentioned, the problem I have this HG up inbound command in IRC right now. The problem with that is it's going to update to the current inbound, which already has that backout on it. And that means our attempt to back out is not going to go too well because it's already gone. So I'm going to put a command in there. I'm going to say HG up C revision E. This one here, this is the last commit prior to Eric's backout. So you can see this on Tree Herder. This is the push immediately prior to Eric's doing the backout. So this is Michael Novotny, test race cache with network, JS test is failing, blah, 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 blah. Again, it's the commit immediately before Eric's backout. But that's good because that means this commit will still have the broken stuff from Baku in there. Again, promise these updates won't take nearly as long in the future. But yeah, I would get in the habit of doing the pull FX trees on a fairly regular basis. It'll make your life a lot easier if you do it just kind of even a habit. This was just kind of it's been a little while, just run it again now. I mean, I guess if you were feeling really fancy, you could set up a cron job or something and have it auto do it every 10 minutes or whatever if you really felt motivated. Totally up to you. But again, the other thing is realistically, once you've done it once, like ESR 31, ESR 24, those branches are long dead. You're never going to pull updated commits from those ever again because those haven't been changed in years. So once you do this initial pull of everything, you're never going to see any real history for those branches again, and it'll just skip right past them. You can already see that these are going a lot faster as we get to like inbound and things like that, where you have a recently current clone. Looks like we're
should not be removed, those branches.
The unified repository specifically is meant to keep all the old Gecko branches in it.
Okay.
What you could do is, if you didn't want to have those, is you could clone Mozilla Central, and then you could pull in using the FX Trees extension. You could Firefox Trees extension. You could pull in inbound and autoland. You could basically pull in the other branches you care about, and then use the same syntax as ever. But basically, Mozilla Unified explicitly was designed to have all the history from all these branches. So that was a design decision on its part. So, but again, once you pull in the history, you'll never see it again. I mean, they'll be there and you'll never use it. It's really kind of your own style as to which you find preferable. But it really just comes down to disk space.
Or we should use the 4 big branches like Central, Aurora, Beta, and Release, and work only on that.
Yeah, I mean, even Aurora doesn't exist anymore, so Aurora's a dead branch too. So at this point, for now, your main branches will be Central, Inbound, and Autoland. That's trunk, and then once we eventually get you to an uplift, Beta will be relevant to you as well. Release in ESR 52 as well. Release not so much because that's what we're shipping actual, like current, Firefox 55 is currently shipping off Mozilla Release. So I mean, unless we're shipping unless we're doing a bug fix release or something, Mozilla Release doesn't really change much either.
Okay, this is done.
Hooray!
Yay.
Hooray!
I promise you that will never take that long again. Because realistically, yeah, Central, Inbound, Autoland, to a lesser extent Beta, that's where 99% of the changes are going to land. So, and those will be all that ever really change. Okay, actually, as I mentioned before, you're not going to want to update to Inbound because that's going to be too new. And that backout that is not going to be there. Now it'll switch faster though. There you go. Yeah, this should be a pretty quick one. See, again, if you're on Windows right now, this would have taken you probably a few minutes. So it's a little slower. It's depressing as it is. Okay, so now we are fully in the right place. We are on the commit immediately prior to the backout. So pretending Eric's never did what he was going to do, you can now actually move forward with this. So going back down to Baku's commit, you can see that there's 5 changes in that push that we'll need to back out. Starting at 78C, blah, 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 all the way to CFA 718, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so Mercurial has some wonderful shortcuts to make your life easier. You don't have to do every single one of these one command at a time, because that would be terrible. So, and I'm going to try and dig up some Mercurial documents for you because there's some useful information in Mercurial's documentation that explains more about how some of this stuff works. Again, I would really recommend taking some time, if you haven't yet, to go through the docs about Mercurial specifically, about how, their merge documentation and ranges and things like that, because knowing how the fundamentals of how this version control software works will make your job a lot easier over time as you get more familiar with them. So, in this case here, you can specify, if we're looking at this broken commit here, we can say we want to back out everything from 7CD991 blah, 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 blah to CFA with a double colon between the two revisions. So again, you've got the wiki page up with the links to the command, so I'm going to assume you're looking at HG oops already from the wiki documentation. So you do HG oops, we're going to do E, and then E will be pulling up the editor so that you can edit the commit message if you want. S, which is the do it all in one single change rather than every individual one. You're like, you know, committing them as one single commit instead of 5 separate ones. And then R is the revision. I'm going to say 78CD. I'm typing this into IRC right now, so it'll show up in a minute here. I'm just explaining. I guess what I should have done is typed it in and then explained it. Sorry. Hang on. Okay, so you see the ESR, and then, as I mentioned before, we have 78CD, blah, 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 blah. The double colon there says everything in between inclusive, so it's saying includes these two revisions as well. So everything from 78CD to CFA, and the double colon makes sure that it stays only on the specific branch there. If you use a single colon, it can potentially do things that you don't expect it to do, so be careful to use a double colon. So that command there is going to now, go ahead and run that. You can see now it's actually doing it, and now it did all 5 of those. It pulled up the editor, so now you're looking at now this is your chance to edit the commit message. So typically what we're going to do, as you notice from what Eric's actually did, is that we tend to put a reason on it as well. So you would say like back out 5 change sets, blah, blah, because, you know, or for, you know, in this case, you know, for hazard failures and web platform tests and whatever else, right? So that's, you know, Eric's put in on his main commit message here. I'll just paste that into the channel. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, you see he put the note in there about that. So you would add the reason in there. You go ahead and close your editor out, save it, and then go ahead and, yeah, you probably want to drop that R equals back out junk. Yeah, you want it to look nice when it's done here. So yeah, you could just remove, I would just leave it right at, honestly, you don't even need any of that. I would just say just unexpected passes in WPT. Yep, perfect, right? Just like that. Well, I would keep the other part of that, but oh, I see. That got really wrecked. Okay, I see. Yeah, so the problem is you kind of lost. Yeah, I see what you mean now. Okay, I see what happened. So, okay, so now you've just done your back out. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you're not going to inadvertently push more things than you think. So you can check to see what if you're going to push to inbound, what you'd be pushing to it right now. So if you type in that command, you will see that, in fact, look at that. It wants to push a back out. So that's good. That's saying you're not going to inadvertently push a bunch of other junk. Now, for example, just to show you what do that same command, but do auto land instead of inbound. And this is where we're going to learn a very important lesson about how Mercurial works. So yeah, do the same command again, but instead of inbound, do auto land instead. A little bit more in there than that push, right?
Yeah.
That's because we talked before a little bit, and this kind of gets back to doing merges too. This outgoing command is going to tell you everything that's different between, basically it's going to look at everything that's different between your local clone and whatever repository you're comparing against, or every branch you're comparing against. So right now, autoland and inbound have diverging histories. They are, you know, they're pretty far apart from each other. The last commit they have in common goes back to whenever Eric did his last round of merges earlier today. And since then, inbound and autoland have both seen different changes. So right now, if you were to push to autoland right now, you would also end up pushing all the history from inbound since. which is not what you want. So this is a good example of why HGOut is outgoing. You know, the outgoing command is a very useful thing to do as a sanity check to make sure that you're not inadvertently pushing more changes than you think you're pushing, because that'll tell you very clearly. Basically, Mercurial doesn't lie, saying it doesn't know what any of those commits are on the Autoland branch. It's saying these commits that you have on the inbound branch don't exist on Autoland, so it's going to push all of those changes, and that's not going to go well. So that's what this command can tell you. You can use it's in pager mode right now. You can hit page down, page up to go between the history. Apparently, the video doesn't like that. And then if you want to get out of the pager mode, you can hit Q, and that'll quit, you know, pager. So important thing, sanity check. I recommend always doing the HG out before pushing anything. Always. I mean, whether it's check-in needed or anything, always double check to make sure that you're not inadvertently pushing more changes than you think, pushing to the wrong place, anything like that. Make sure that the name is correct. You know, for example, the user here. Make sure that looks right. Make sure the commit message looks good. All of those things. Double check it all before you push. Now, as you can see in your current one here, the other problem you've got is your commit message is pretty screwed up at the moment, right? I wouldn't want to push to inbound like that. You can fix that after the fact. Thankfully, you, I believe, already have the HistEdit extension enabled on your, so you actually have two options right now. The easiest thing right now is you can do HG, do you have amend enabled? If you haven't, try this first, okay? Okay, you do not have amend enabled, okay. Go back into there quick. Go ahead and go back into your HGRC for a minute. And you want to add to your list of extensions to amend equals, like that. Just add that in there. Yep, perfect. Because then you can do HG commit amend. This is really handy when you just want to edit the last commit in your series. If you want to edit more than that, we use the HistEdit extension. So now you can see you've got an editor back up here, and you can change the commit message however you like. You're muted.
How can we switch to another editor? Now it's using Vim.
That you would change in your HGRC as well. I use Emacs personally under the UI section.
Hold on.
Yeah, you're going to have to quit out of there first. It supports an editor under the UI section here. Yeah, so under UI, you have username equals, interface equals, yeah, so you can do editor equals.
I can nano like that?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know which ones it supports completely out of the box. Let me see. Editor here. And again, this is where Mercurial has some fantastic documentation. So, not that does you a lot of good, but yeah, so did it work there? Did it use Nano when you saved it? Yeah, now try it.
Yeah, cool. Works.
All right. So now you can edit your commit message into something that's not awful. Whatever. That's fine. Hey, this is how you're going to learn, right? So, but again, this is why one of the first things I'm teaching you is how to fix things that go horribly wrong. So, always a good first lesson. So, yeah. So in theory, you would do that. You edit your commit message so it looks all nice.
I think this was the final one.
I would just say, what I would say is you probably want backup 5 change sets, then you want the bug number in parentheses.
I think this is it.
Yeah, I would say you want something more like, God, there's really no way for me to do that. Well, I suppose I could just run the command myself. That would be way too easy, though. I would think you would want something like, I'm going to quick do it locally on my end here quick, and then I'll copy and paste in. Give me just a minute here, I'm doing it right now. If I were the one doing the back out, I would end up with a commit message looking something like this. Wait for it. Come on. All right. I would probably do like that. And then the list of commits underneath it still. So then there's still that list of 5 commits directly below that line. But for the top line, it would end up looking like that. Is what I would do.
So basically, the first
line
should go.
Yeah, kill those top 2 lines and then change it out to, whatever the IRC there. Yeah, maybe add an extra space there. But yeah.
Looks good?
Yep, looks good. Perfect. And again, if you do the HD out inbound now, you'll see it looks very nice. And you can see it amended your change there. If you ever need to undo it, you can actually undo your change using that backup bundle that it saved. We won't worry about that for now. Go ahead and do that, and you should have a nice outgoing commit that if you had level 3 commit access, and if we weren't going to be doing everything crazy, then you could just do HD push inbound, and off it would go. The other thing that we didn't exactly discuss today, but would be relevant here in this case, would be odds are very good that if you've noticed that things are breaking right now, it would be in your best interest to close the trees while you're doing all of this work so that developers aren't landing more changes while you're trying to get this back out done. Because A, that's just more broken commits that you're going to have to start later. and B, that means you're going to try and push. There's going to be new changes you're going to have to pull in and rebase and everything else, and it's just going to make it's like a moving target for you to push your back out too. So assuming you've gone ahead and closed the trees while you're doing all this so that no other commits are landing, you would also need to add in your commit message somewhere the exact phrase uppercase closed tree. I would recommend being aggressive with closing the trees for exactly what I said before about the fact that you don't want to deal with all that other junk. You'll notice Eric's did the same here. I'm sorry, because I realize now when I go into looking at his full commit message, his full commit message is actually R equals back out on a closed tree like that. Specifically, again, because that closed tree there is the magic that allows you to push even though the tree is closed. It has to be in your commit message. Anywhere is fine. It doesn't have to be in the first line. It can be anywhere in there. But it has to be in your commit message for you to push to a closed tree. So you'll note that's one that he did as well. You don't need to bother with the R equals back out thing. We tell developers they need the R equals in their commit messages, but we don't have any sort of actual enforcement of that on the repository level. We do enforce a lot of things, like if you try to push a commit without a bug number in it, under most circumstances, it will prevent you from being able to push that. So if I just made a change in Mercurial and I just called it hello world, it would rightfully block me from pushing that change. It would say this is an invalid commit message. You can't push this. And great. We don't enforce that with R equals. So I've always think it's kind of silly because it just looks odd to me, because it looks like you're adding it because it's kind of the commit hook's happy, but it doesn't really need to be there, and it's not like anyone's really reviewed it. So I personally wouldn't bother with the R equals back out thing like that. I would just say for rooting hazards on a closed tree, call it a day.
Yeah. When we move to Fabricator, this is going to get enforced in a different way. So we will get rid of a lot of the problems by switching the tooling here. Fabricator allows us to do stuff like enforcing that try runs must complete before code can actually be landed in auto land. And it's just going to take away a whole class of merges that we're going to have to do anyway. Yeah, I wouldn't bother too much about, like, the code is already marked as backing out. right? So there's no point r equals backup is redundant, I think. So I recognize that we're almost done our hour here. We can schedule a follow-up session. What I'd encourage all the Soft Vision people on the call here, if there was stuff that you heard today that you want Ryan or myself or some other sheriff to dig into more, I mean, you can ask us in RC, that's great, but if we need to schedule a second meeting, and I think we probably will, to go over other parts, let's just write all that stuff down somewhere and we'll make sure we cover that stuff in another session.
Yeah, I'm also going to strongly recommend, I'm going to try and find a few of the docs. Mercurial has a pretty good wiki. What I like about it is they have like some figures and things like that too that kind of visually show like branching and things like that, that at least for my brain it's easier to kind of wrap my head around when I see it visually when they talk about. So I'm going to try and dig up a few of those docs quick too and throw them into the SV sheriffing channel as well. Oh, they actually have their whole, yeah, let's see here, merge. Because yeah, here we go. Yeah, because I feel like before we get into the mechanics of doing a merge, understanding the basics of like the conceptual basis of what merging is probably worth spending time on.
Okay, so I recorded the session. I'm going to edit it down and I'll post it back to the channel too. I'll drop a link somewhere today once I've done that. Thank you, Ryan. That was very informative. I learned a bunch of stuff today too. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. Because there's plenty more to learn here.
Okay, any last questions?
Oh, I guess one thing I will have you do quick, just so you don't wreck your, just so you don't have to stuck with this random merge commit in your repository. For the sake of just being easy now, just do that quick, and that'll get rid of that commit. So the bit of a shortcut here, you can see that outgoing, the tag tip there. So that's saying that's the tip revision, so that's a shortcut. You could also do HG script F, and then you could do the revision, the hash number specifically too. But in this case, now if you do HG out inbound, you'll see that there's nothing outgoing there. If you do, and now since you strip that commit away, it's gone. You could also do hist edit and delete. Oh, actually, I don't know how hist edit plays with merges. It may not like merge commits, so you might have to strip it. I don't know. Anyway, but just for the sake of now, getting you back to a normal, sane repository state again, away from what we were just playing around with. Now you're back to where you started again, because you just got rid of the commit that you created. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Talk to you later.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.